I'd like to call Brian Geis, and Brian is the guy that does everything automotive for you. If you need to know who to fix it, if you need to buy one or sell one, see Brian.
Thank you, Andre. Yep. Thank you, Andre. We have one visiting Rotarian today from Austin, Minnesota Club, Ted Hendricks. Ted, welcome. Some reminders. Our next fellowship is right around the corner on March 24th. We still need some hosts for that fellowship. Please get a hold of Lauren after the meeting if you'd like to sponsor that. It's pretty good. You get a lot of people coming and visiting, and you get to tell them what you're interested in. So in lieu of February's Rotary Happy Hour Connect, Lonnie is forming a Rodeo Polio Plus team for the February 23rd grocery cart races. It helps us support the purchase and preparation of 65,000 meals for homeless families and individuals be sheltered at the Comitas Crisis Center. Please see Lonnie Langton or Debbie Kaufman for information on that. That sounds fun. The Scholastic Arts Award Expo will be on Thursday evening, March 3rd at the Historic History Museum from 5:30 to 7:30. Reservations are now open at DAC-DB. This will be in lieu of our regular club meeting. On Sunday, March 13th, the Rotary Club of Winter Park Fraser will be naming Felicia Muftick as the 2016 recipient of the Service Above Self Award at their annual dinner. This will also they will also remember Dr. Mike Muftick, who actually created the award. Look for more information in next week's Keyway to register for this celebration. Congratulations, Felicia. Each week, the Rotary Club of Bandenberg City Daybreak in Queensland, Australia, selects a Rotary Club to toast. This week, they selected the Rotary Club of Denver. They also toasted our Super Bowl Denver Bronco champions. How about those Broncos? So the survey that was sent out by the club is back. Thank you if you participated in that survey. It was an anonymous survey, and several people said that they would like to be contacted about giving, planned giving, and so on. But we don't know who you are because this was anonymous. So if you put in there that you'd like to be contacted, please call the office and let Darlene know, and we'll get the information to you. Well, this week's Berthatarians that are here, please stand to be recognized. Hank Brown, Giles Paulson, Sid Brooks, Seth Patterson, Melinda Quaid, Wellington Webb, I don't think he's here today, Harley Shaver, Dennis Cooper. Happy birthday. Andre, back to you. Have a good week.
Brian, that was wonderful. Thank you very much. Now we have a great thing. We have introducing 3 brand new members, and that's always so exciting to do. The first introduction is going to be done by Lonnie Langdon, and Lonnie is with Action Coach. I have worked with her partner Steve, who coaches business owners and executives on how to get more out of their business. So if you have any interest in that, please see Lonnie.
I want to introduce Elizabeth Bueller and a personal friend.
Thank you, Lonnie. Hi, everybody. I'm Elizabeth Bueller. I'm so very pleased to be a new member of Club 31, and I am reading from this because Lauren wrote me an email and said I had to write it down. So I'm going to do that. As with all things in life, timing is everything. I've had my eye on Rotary for a long, long time, and it wasn't the right timing for me. But with a nice introduction from Lonnie, here I am, voila, and I can't wait to get involved and meet all of you. During the workday, you'll find me out in Golden. I have an insurance agency out there. I specialize in home, auto, and life insurance. It's been almost 10 years doing that, and I still love it every day, so I'm very thankful for that. The other thing I'm very thankful for are my 2 boys. I have an 18-year-old and a soon-to-be 16-year-old. Without a doubt, they keep me grounded, humble, and grateful every single day. So thank you all so much, and again, I'm really looking forward to volunteering with all of you. Thank you.
The economy is going into some turbulent waters, and I'm sure Chris Peters would love to talk to you about how to handle your investments. So, Chris, do you want to do the next introduction?
Thanks, President Andre. I got about 20 minutes of material prepared if anybody wants to go through it all. Today I'm pleased to introduce to our club Joe Scholl. He has a very unique and interesting background that I think you will all enjoy learning more about.
Hello, everybody. My name is Joke, as Chris already said. I'm from South Sudan, and I'm working on having the school for ladies built in South Sudan, and that's why I joined this club, because it's a very a great place to be. Besides that, there's not much I can say, so I'm just preserving the time for the rest. Thank you.
And the last introduction from Ed Heath. Your car is one of your greatest assets, and if you ever needed a praise, Ed is your man.
President Andre, members of Club 31, today for me this is a very great honor to introduce my very close friend for some 25 years, Mr. Peter Hickok Bellows, recently moved to Denver, former Rotarian in the Philippines, and Peter's going to tell you about his background.
Good morning, Rotarians. Delighted to be joining the Rotary Club of Manila. Let me offer a few words of introduction. I was brought up outside of New York, graduated from Amherst College, spent 3 years as a Marine Corps lieutenant in Vietnam, then returned to Harvard Business School for an MBA. Citibank hired me and packed me off to Brazil, where I met my wife, a Brazilian educated in England. We were subsequently assigned to Lagos and then to Manila. I moved back to Brazil as Senior Vice President for Citibank's South America consumer business, and then to London, where I had the same job for Europe. When I retired, I returned to Brazil, where I served as President of the American Society of Sao Paulo, founded 2 small businesses, and worked as a temporary CEO for foreign companies. This is how I met my sponsor, Ed Heath, who hired me to manage the Brazilian subsidiary of Gates Rubber Company while he searched for a local executive. I was an active member of the Manila Club of Rotary, of the Rotary Club of Manila, and having visited your club as Ed's guest a couple of years ago, I'm convinced that your club will be every bit as worthwhile as that one was. I'm most attracted to efforts to improve basic education and health in the developing world. In Sao Paulo, I worked with an organization that taught illiterate adults reading and writing skills. Listening to their graduation testimonials was a major highlight of my years in Brazil. I'm also very much in awe of the work done by several organizations to improve access to clean water for poor, isolated communities. When you see the source of the water that many of these people have to drink and lug to their homes, with cow dung and washing soap in the water, you understand why so many people there are sick and malnourished. In January, we moved to a new house in North Cherry Creek, close to our daughter and her family, which was the main reason for our coming to Denver. We spend several months a year at our home in London. I eagerly look forward to meeting Rotarians and learning more about your work in this wonderful city. Thank you.
It is so wonderful to have new Rotarians, but particularly ones that already come with some years of experience. I'm going to welcome you to our club and encourage you to get involved and engaged. You'll get as much out of the club as you put in. So thank you for being Rotarians. I've got folders for you here with your pins. And I also encourage you, just as the meeting is about to finish, please head to the door with your sponsors so you can be greeted. And if we can please welcome all of our new members to the club. Thank you and welcome. It is truly exciting. Now we have another exciting thing. Jim White from Jim White Machinery is going to be converting red to blue. Let's see how you do that.
Well, thank you, President Andre. Today I really have the pleasure of awarding some blue badges to those members who have been with us for 6 months or just a little over. I would like to, first of all, ask hope that every one of you has taken the time to meet these fine Rotarians and make them feel welcome and part of our club. I've talked to most of them, and they are on committees, and they seem to be enjoying Rotary, so I think you must be doing your job. So as I call your names, I'd like you to come up to the front, and Darlene over here has your badges, and she will exchange your your red badge for a blue one. Come on up here, stay up here in the front, and just stay here. We'll give you all a round of applause when we're done. The first is Ben Allen, president of Allen Technology Advertising. Ben was sponsored by Scott White. Debbie Beasley, vice president and technical manager of Wells Fargo Bank, sponsored by Mary Penny. Melissa Bowen, executive director of YMCA Downtown, sponsored by Scott White. Looks like he's been busy. Luke Lee, regional manager and partner, Douglas Parking LLC, sponsored by Mark Donovan. Mike McPhail, partner of Faegre Baker Daniels, sponsored by Rich Harris. Michelle Maldonado, if I mispronounced that, Michelle, I'm sorry, Director of Grants, Foundation Partnerships, and Donor Relations for Denver Kids, Inc., sponsored by previous member Joe Malaski. Ann McGeehan, partner of McGeehan & Associates, LLC, sponsored by Peg Johnson. Larry Shermer, retired Coca-Cola executive, sponsored by Bill West. And David Steinberger, partner of Lewis Rocco Rothenberger, sponsored by Carter Sales. Let's give all of these members a round of applause. And please take time to meet the remaining Red Badge members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Now we're going to move on to the program part. And, you know, there were 3 architects that were on the way to a convention, and they got into a car accident and died and got to the pearly gates. And St. Peter says, oh, how timely. You know, our pearly gates are getting a little old, and they need a new design and renovation. Do you want to bid on the project? So he gets the sealed bids, and he opens them. The guy from Colorado had a $50,000 bid. The guy from Chicago had a $100,000 bid. And the guy from New York had a $150,000 bid. So he calls the guy from New York aside. He says, you know, I know you come from Donald Trump's territory. He says, but I don't understand it. You know, 50, 100, but you're 150? He says, yes, of course. He says, 50,000 for you, 50,000 for me, and $50,000 for the guy from Colorado to get to do it. So we're going to have Carl Berg, and he's a retired architect. And Carl is now involved in a commission that he was appointed by the governor. When a school district fails to get their bond passed, he helps them design something that costs significantly less to get the project done. And he also is doing a lot more community work on top of that. So let's please welcome Carl Berg.
Well, Andre is a tough act to follow, but I think we all are in for a pleasurable talk this afternoon. How would you like to have a job that you had 660,000 employers or 2 million users? Our speaker today, Brad Buchanan, has just such a job. As Executive Director of the Community Planning and Development for Denver, he sees the zoning and the development in Denver follows the wonderful pattern established by his predecessors in this office. Can you imagine, again, one of the problems that he faces, we face? And that is that you probably all recognize that in the last 6 years, the metropolitan area has gained 100,000 people. 100,000 people. How do you handle that kind of increase in all our services? Prior to joining the city, Brad had a distinguished practice as an architect. He was awarded the honor of fellowship in the American Institute of Architects in 2007. He is a past chairman of the Denver Planning Board and past chairman of the Downtown Denver Partnership. He was a member of the Denver Area Plan Steering Committee, and in 2000, and charged with the implementation of the Downtown Area Plan. He has served as Denver Landmark on the Landmark Preservation Committee. In 1999, Brad founded the Freedom by Design, a nonprofit organization providing design and construction services for the disabled community. Brad is eminently qualified for the job that he holds today. He graduated from Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and lives with his wife, Margaret, and they have two college-age children. It is my pleasure to introduce Brad Buchanan.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. How are you? Good. It's nice to be among Rotarians. I'm a former Rotarian. I was a member of I think you had one of your new 6-month members, new Blue Badge members mentioned Evergreen. I was a member of the Evergreen Club for a lot of years and was vice president there. And in 1995, got to attend the international convention in Nice and took my, at that point, new wife, Margaret, to France and had an amazing trip. And I have unending admiration for the work that what Rotary does. It truly is an incredibly impactful organization that is so efficient. That's always impressed me with the what every dollar achieves for Rotary is unparalleled. So thank you for your service and for what you do. Carl mentioned I'm the planning director for the city and county of Denver. I've been in that position for a little less than 2 years. I came out of the private sector, owned an architecture, construction, and sometimes development company for many years here in Denver. I moved to Denver in 1982, and been very involved in the community. And at my position is a mayoral appointment. I serve at the pleasure of the mayor, and it has been one of the most interesting, exciting, active, rewarding experiences of my life. I'm loving every minute of it. I have a lot of different topics that I'll sort of touch on, and then I'll make sure I leave a good chunk of time at the end for any questions you might have. Obviously, Denver is an amazing place right now. I mean, for all of you who have been here for a long time, I moved here in 1982, as I mentioned. That was the year the 16th Street Mall opened up. There were 15,000 people a day riding the mall shuttle bus up and down the mall at that time. And today there are 45 to 50,000 people a day. On April 22nd, when the East Line, the A line out to the airport opens up, they're estimating up as many as 70,000 riders a day riding the shuttle. I mean, that's just one statistic. Our department also, we oversee all of planning, short-term and long-term planning, as well as building department and zoning. And as you can imagine, we're very, very busy. In 2015, we set a record for both the number of building permits that were issued, almost 80,000, and for the value of that work, over $3 billion worth of construction valuation implemented in the city and county of Denver in 2015. Now, the growth in Denver is a very active conversation. I'll put it that way. Lots of opinions about where our city is going, how we get there, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that. Planning for our city is a complex, multi-headed organism. We're trying to think about 20 years, 40 years, 50 years down the road. In the late 90s, my predecessor, a woman named Jennifer Moulton, she was also an architect, actually the first architect to hold the planning director position for the city and county of Denver. Jennifer and her colleagues saw the future of our city. This is in the late 80s, early 90s. And she said, they're coming. Folks are coming. We have got such an amazing lifestyle here. How can they not come? They're coming. And we need to be thinking about it. We need to be thinking about where we're going to put them. And in through the 90s, we worked on a plan called Blueprint Denver. This is our integrated land use and transportation plan. And in 2001, we adopted that plan. And in that plan, it did a number of really smart things, but one of the really genius things it did is that it created some concept called areas of change and areas of stability. And it called 18% of the city and county of Denver an area of change and 82% area of stability. And it said that let's direct the investment, the development growth towards those areas of change. And even though it feels like everything is under construction right now, because everything is under construction right now, I will tell you that that was the plan. We can't control how fast it works. We can't control the marketplace, but we can control how it happens and where it happens. And so this is what Blueprint Denver said. 18% of the city, let's direct that development investment fire hose at those areas. And in 2013, 14, and 15 respectively, and hang with me here because there's a bunch of numbers I'm going to throw, but they're important. At a ratio of 5-to-1, 16-to-1, 6-to-1, and 11-to-1 in 2015, we saw investment in areas of change over areas of stability. So that means in 2013, at a ratio of 5-to-1, development happened in 18% of our city over the other 82%. That doesn't mean that the other 82% didn't see development. They did, and we are. But I just want to tell you that as painful as this is, and as we see more congestion, as we see the impacts and interruption of construction, there is a plan. There is a method very much behind this madness. And then again in 2015, at a ratio of 11-to-1 in that 18% of the city. So the plans are working. Now, that said, and I'll talk a little bit more about what we're doing next in terms of planning, there are all these issues that come with that. And this is part of being a successful place. Affordable housing. We have seen housing prices just go up and up and up. What a one-bedroom apartment costs downtown. That's because we have more people that want it than we have supply of it. And of course, the developers are responding. You're seeing tower cranes everywhere. There's 3, 5, 8, 12, 16, 20-story buildings happening everywhere to build that housing. And it's happening in the right places. We're trying to build those projects in those areas of change so that we can create the sort of supply that we need in order to have those prices modulate. Now, affordable housing is a multi-layered concept. It isn't just affordable housing for someone who's one step above homelessness. It's workforce housing. It's housing for a teacher or for a firefighter. It's for the full spectrum. How do we make sure we're doing all those things? And planning, creating transit lines and working on mobility, making it easy to get around our city and less expensive to move around our city are all critically important pieces. Let's talk about mobility, congestion. We're all feeling it. It takes longer to get from here to there. I don't care where you're going in our city. It takes longer to get from here to there in our city right now because we're not moving the buildings. If you think of our streets, they're like a pipe. And we're not moving the buildings. There's so much stuff you can move through there at one time. We need to think about different ways to move around our city. For all of you and for me, I suspect most of you on your 16th birthday, we all went down to the DMV and we took our test because there was nothing cooler than having your driver's license and getting your own car. We had to have it. We were in love with the car. That's changing. Our younger generation, that's changing. My son and daughter, I had to talk my son 2 months after I had to talk my son into going to get his license. It just made no sense to me whatsoever. He just thinks about how he moves very, very differently than I do. Having a cool vehicle or having the car say something about who you are is just, it's not part of their world. And that is changing. And I will tell you, it's a good thing because the reality is what we all enjoyed today, what you all enjoyed today, you drove here, single occupant vehicle. I suspect lots of you drove alone, parked in a safe, clean parking structure next door, and walked here. That is changing. Our most urban environments are going to have to change. There are going to be more people on bikes. There are going to be more people on transportation. On April 22nd, I live out east. On April 22nd, I'm going to start riding the train into downtown and getting on the shuttle and riding the shuttle up to the Webb Building at 201 West Colfax. That's a great change, and it's an important change for us to have because we can't all fit in the places we want to fit with single-family vehicles. And that means everywhere, and that means not just downtown, but it means tough corridors like Colorado Boulevard. I mean, it's a totally auto-oriented place. How do we think about Colorado Boulevard? How do we create dedicated transportation that allows choice riders, not just folks that have to ride public transit, because they have no choice, but you have a choice. You have to make transportation, public transportation and transit and mobility options so comfortable that you'll decide to leave the car at home. I'm going to ride a brand new train with Wi-Fi on it, very comfortable seats, clean from along the I-70 corridor into downtown. I'm excited about doing that. Now, if you told me I had to ride the Colfax bus right now, probably not so much. So it's about creating those sort of mobility options that are really important. Design quality. There's lots of conversation right now about, these new buildings, and everybody's got an opinion, and architecture is to some extent, has plenty of art in it, and people have different opinions about it, and that's fantastic. But we also see you've got great developers and not so great developers, and folks who see themselves as civic entrepreneurs, if you will, stewards of the built environment of our city. And you have folks who aren't caring as much. They want to make their bucks. They're going to build the building, they're going to sell the building, they're going to make the money, they're on to the next boom city. So we have a number of tools that we use in the city to try to help manage that, but we're having a whole new level of conversation right now. And this has been part of, I would say, this design quality conversation has probably been going on for 40 years in Denver, but I've seen a lot of the evolution in the last 25 or 30. The marketplace has to be able to accept this. And by marketplace, I mean our demands on quality have to be achievable, economically achievable in the marketplace. Meaning if we put a design standard on a project and say it's got to be gold-plated, and the market won't pay for gold-plated, either one of two things happen. Either they build it and no one can afford to live in it, rent it, buy it, whatever, or two, it just doesn't get built. So there's always this upward pressure to push on design quality. One of the things we did is that in 2010 we created a form-based and a context-based zoning code. We remapped the entire city in 2010 and created a new code which directs building forms on their sites. It's a much more aggressive and progressive approach to zoning. Denver was the first major metropolitan city in the United States to holistically adopt a form-based and context-based code. Almost every big city in the country is going through that process right now. But the zoning code is a crude tool. It's a foundation. It is not about design quality. It doesn't talk about materials. It doesn't talk about whether a building is interesting. Is it just a big old flat wall? It doesn't talk about that. That takes additional tools like design review or design overlays or landmarking. That's probably the most intensive level of design review we have in the city. So right now, a number of neighborhoods, a number of places in our city are exploring all those tools. For example, Arapahoe Square, just north of downtown, between downtown and Curtis Park and Five Points, we're about to legislatively, that means city council will apply for and be the sponsor for a rezoning of the Arapahoe Square area, and we will adopt as part of the new zoning for that a mandatory design review process, meaning that every project that's built in Arapahoe Square will go through a full-on design review process with architects around the table and citizens and residents around the table. We have that, I would also mention, in what has turned out to be some of the most valuable real estate in our city. Cherry Creek, Lodo has design review, Country Club has design review. These are the places that understand the value of great design, and I would suggest to you that we should have a much greater part of our city that new projects should go through design review, and I'm pushing hard for that right now. A few trends that we're seeing that are really, I think, interesting and telling. Micro units. This is not your grandfather's apartment anymore. I mean, these units that in the 70s and 80s were 1,500 square feet, shrunk in the late 90s and early 2000s to 1,200, 1,300 square feet, and then they dip below 1,000 square feet, and now there are micro units out there. And this is a phenomenon that's happened in lots of other cities as real estate prices get so expensive, and as residential for sale prices. I mean, San Francisco, New York City, Boston, Philadelphia, parts of Chicago, to buy a condominium in those cities can be $1,000 to $2,000 a square foot. We've never seen those kind of prices here in Denver. But as those prices rise, people start thinking about location. I don't need that bigger unit. I just want to be there. I want to be downtown. We are the #1 destination location for millennials in the United States right now. That's a good thing. These are people that show up with a lot of money in their pocket. They usually make a lot of money. They don't have kids yet. They spend a lot of time spending money in all of our businesses. They're active in the community. They care about experience. They care about place. They care about culture. They want to do the right thing. We are the #1 destination for that. It's an amazing fuel for our city. And they also are the target for companies, big corporations, look at cities like Denver and say, we want to hire those 20-something, 30-somethings. That's the educated workforce. That's one of the great, amazing things about Colorado, really, and Denver particularly, is that we don't produce a bunch of homegrown college graduates, but boy, we attract them. We get them. I'm one. I moved here. I was born and raised in Ohio, went to architecture school a week after I graduated. Thank you, Ohio. I'm out. And come to Colorado. So we are the beneficiary of that a lot. And it's a great thing, but you have to have affordable housing in order for those folks to be able to afford to live here and stay here. We're starting to hear about some millennials who came here and said, too expensive. Can't stay. That's the beginning of a downward spiral. If the millennials in the educated workforce leaves, the jobs leave with them. And when that happens, it's Atlanta. Atlanta in the 90s was the #1 destination in the country for millennials, and they didn't respond to this issue. And over the years, they began to struggle, and they never really recovered from that. Sharing economy. We're seeing an unbelievable, this is a new way of looking at assets. And I'll use a simple example. If 5 of us live on a block and we all need a step ladder twice a year, typically we all go out and buy 5 step ladders. Well, that isn't happening anymore. They buy 1 step ladder and they share the step ladder. That's really smart. They're sharing everything. Cars, apartments, you can get somebody to come over and make breakfast in your house tomorrow morning. There's an app for that. You can get somebody to drive you wherever you want to drive this afternoon. It's Uber, it's Lyft. It's all about sharing and blurring the lines. And blurring the lines is not just about these uses. It's also about how we're designing our places and spaces. Work, live, learn, all blurred. It's all the same thing. It's real mushy and messy. We're all used to having, like, here's the bedroom and here's the living room and here's the kitchen. And then I get in a car and I go to another place and I go to work. That's just not how it's working right now. It's these co-working places. Google's a perfect example. Google basically tries to make it so cool at the office that you live there. I mean, they have places to sleep and places to rest and places to eat and places to be entertained and kegs of beer. I was over in the Google campus last year and I think I saw 5 kegerators, stuck in the corner of this place. Is this, not what I'm used to. And then the other sort of trend right now that's really fascinating for us is that driverless cars, autonomous vehicles. This is not just Jetson space age stuff. This is happening right now in San Francisco right now. Tesla, you can go and buy a Tesla, an electric car right now that has an autonomous vehicle option on it, and you can download the software, and you can get in a car and tell it where to go and read the newspaper while it drives to where you're going. Today, that can happen today. So it's coming, and it's coming fast, and it's affecting everything we're thinking about in terms of planning, everything Public Works is thinking about. We think this is 10 years away. We think that 10 years from now, this will be significantly different. Like significant difference, like computers and cell phones. This is enormous. What's going to happen? So, I'll talk just a couple of seconds on some projects, really exciting projects. National Western Center, this is the thank you all to the Denver voters for passing 2C, which funded the redevelopment of the National Western Stock Show and the entire National Western Complex. Partnership with CSU, who got $250 million from the state legislature to build their new eco-ag sustainability think tank facility there. It's just spectacular. 61st and Pena, the new heavy rail station, the A-line out to the airport. Panasonic is building a really fascinating sort of smart cities project there. 16th Street Mall, we're working hard on the 16th I right now. I was in meetings all morning with our consultants that are in from Copenhagen right now that are working on the experience of the 16th Street Mall. Colorado Convention Center is going to do an expansion. We're about to publish in the next month or so a new master plan that's been totally stakeholder driven for the Performing Arts Center. And I-70, the new project at the I-70 with the CAP, Brighton Boulevard, Rhino, just amazing stuff. 9th in Colorado, the Gates, the redevelopment of the Gates site at I-25 and Broadway. Very, very active place right now. So, all that's going on. That's how we kind of got up to today. Now, what's next? And how can you be involved and how can you have a voice in this? Planning, what we do at community planning and development, our job and our only job is to facilitate a conversation. This is not my plan. I get blamed for everything. You get stuck in traffic, people yell at me because you got stuck in traffic. I didn't make that happen. But the plans that we do, our best day is our job is to facilitate the highest and best conversation for all of you to make the decisions. So that takes getting involved, that takes showing up, and it's hard work. And sometimes it's really hard work because you're talking about 40 years from now. And, 40 years doesn't seem like a long time to me anymore. But it's hard to convince somebody who's 32 that 40 years isn't a long time. So that's why I think it's really important that our stakeholders, the folks who have lived here for a lot of years, are at the table because you have the greatest breadth of vision around and experience to where we've been and and how we grow. We need your help. And the reason I put that invitation out there is that in the next 90 days, we're going to launch an entire citywide planning initiative. This has been in the works for getting ready to launch for almost 2 years now. We're going to do an update to Blueprint Denver, which is our integrated land use and transportation plan. We're going to do an update to the game plan, which is the parks plan. We're going to update a new plan called the Citywide Strategic Transit Plan. And we're going to do a new plan called our Denver Moves Peds and Trails Plan. That's bikes, pedestrian paths, walkability, bikeability through the city. Every single piece of the public realm is going to go through a planning process in the next 24 months. We saw this. This is historic. We've never had all these things converged at the same time. And we decided to grab a hold of that. And we were doing a coordinated citywide planning initiative where all of these things are coordinated together. You can come to one website, get on one email list, and you can be part of, pick and choose what parts are most important to you. We'll be staggering the pieces so they can inform each other. This is an historic confluence of planning possibilities, but we can't do it without you. So I really, really hope that you'll find a way clear to join us for some of this planning. So it's 12:45, and I was hoping to leave at least 10 minutes for Q&A, and I think we're about there. So thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Yes, sir.
You talked about the encouraging alternative options for the personal automobile and fighting congestion.
I'll repeat the question after he asks it.
Like many other cities of the world. You talked about limiting traffic congestion or reducing the growth by encouraging other means of transportation, building better bus lines and subways and these kind of things. Other cities have looked into actually limiting the automobile into the city by charge mechanisms, such as London and Singapore.
They did a car-free day, I think, recently. And Paris did too.
Other cities smaller than Denver, like Stockholm and Oslo, do have such programs. What have you considered to do in this regard?
Yeah, great question. So we do love us some cars, I'll tell you. We as Americans, we love our cars. I think that we will see those concepts are talked about. Right now, I would say there is significant resistance to that bold of a move. I think it'd be a great move. I think that how we look at the urban core, our city is really kind of in rings. And you think about what it is on 17th Street is different than what it is in the Golden Triangle, which is different than what it is in Highland, which is different than what it is in Lakewood. It's these concentric rings around our city. So, but what are the things like that we could try in that most dense urban core that may solve so many problems? And then what do those other concentric rings, what can they learn from each other? I think we have a major transit and transportation conversation for downtown that's necessary. The 16th Street Mall Shuttle is our only real downtown significant. We have the Metro ride too that sort of drives around, and it carries a lot of folks. But we need more of that, and I think we need to be thinking in the Z-axis. We've been doing the X and Y axis, thinking on the ground for a long time. We need to think about up, and we need to think about down in terms of mobility. If we don't look at in the next 20 to 30 years some sort of subway system, we'll never get it'd be very, very hard. Just with time, it gets more and more expensive to get done. We're going to have to look at that. And I think that when you look at that, you create some sort of a loop system, and inside that loop, it should be carless. We can create, there's something called e-tucks. They're in our city right now. They're these little electric things. They look like bicycle, little two-seater bicycle things, except they're electric. And you're going to see a ton of them in our city. There are some here now, and they're just going to start coming. They're going to be cheap. You can jump on and off of them. They're like cheap cabs. And what if inside that urban core, that was the only allowed kind of vehicle that was in there? Some smaller vehicles that are more efficient. So, what are the questions? Yes, ma'am.
I would appreciate you addressing the impact of marijuana and how you're planning for that.
So marijuana has affected every part of the city right now. It's been absolutely amazing. We think that 20% of our, at least in the electrical world, electrical permits and inspections are marijuana related. I mean, it's unbelievable. There are more marijuana facilities in Denver than there are liquor stores, places where you can buy beer now. It is everywhere. It has changed our place entirely. It has had its impact on our zoning for sure. We're having lots of conversations right now about where do you put it. If it's legal, where do you put it? Where do we want to put a recreational sale facility where you can just walk in and buy marijuana? Where do we put a grow house? I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but we smell like marijuana a lot in our city right now. I mean, there's a place on I-70 about Quebec, driving down I-70 with my car windows closed, and I smell marijuana. It's like, what does that mean? I mean, what do we need additional sort of regulations around how we handle clean air coming out of these facilities? There's a ton of issues with that. I think we've done a great job so far and have really a spectacular job as a city in managing this. We were the first to go here, and good Lord help you if you to be the first to go to somewhere like this. Other cities are copying what we're doing, and I think we're doing a good job. We're not done. We have more work to do around it. It's been an amazing change. Yeah. Sure.
Brad, first of all, you're doing an amazing job. And in 2 years, you've had such a profound impact. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I wonder if you'd come back and talk about the driverless car a little bit more. I think you're conservative in terms of the implementation time. What's your conversation been about the use of parking structures? About
with use of what?
Parking structures. The use, the underground parking in the buildings, just the whole remapping of the space that we commit to cars.
Yeah. So let's talk about parking structures, which is fascinating. So right now in downtown, you can do parking above grade, and so you see a lot of these new buildings, they'll have like retail or lobby or whatever on the first floor, and then 2 through, pick a number, 6, 7, 8 stories is all parking structure, and then they put the office or the condos or whatever on top of that. So we've got all these space, and what do parking structures look like? They're sloped, right? They're all big sloped. So what happens when when we have driverless cars and your car stays parked in your garage and you take your phone and you punch, I'm here and I want to go to work, and this thing pulls up in front of your house, you jump in, it whizzes you downtown faster because it's platooning with 100 other vehicles. We weren't doing what humans do and starting to stop, and it's just jumping on, I-25 or Colorado Boulevard, and just, they're moving faster. There are no accidents, right? And it drives you to the front of your office building, stops, you jump out, and it leaves and goes and picks up the next thing that the computer is telling it to pick it up. We have 8 stories, and I would suggest some of the most valuable real estate in that building. I mean, you can say, we like our views, but now you're talking about the meat of the tomato of our downtown is a bunch of concrete sloped floors. What are we going to do with that? I mean, it's a huge question. Developers right now that are developing in downtown are not building sloped parking structures. That's how serious they are. They're thinking about that in some number of years, we're going to turn that space into something else when we don't need it for cars anymore. So it's moves like that we need to absolutely be getting our arms around. It could be sooner than that. I don't know. Had a fascinating conversation with Don Hunt, former head of CDOT. CDOT's thinking amazing things. They're already thinking about in their highway design what driverless cars really means. So who over here?
Okay, I've never done this before, but I'm entirely in favor of everything you said. My other car is an Uber. So,
yeah.
But going back to the rules that you've made around this development and the circles
I didn't make, but thanks.
Well, you and your team, or the city.
Yeah.
What I want to know is, could you speak to the lack of setback for the new buildings that are going up between Monaco and the Denver Tech Center on Bellevue, right off the highway? That is a neighborhood where within a quarter of a mile or less, there are residences, and where it's always been low rises. Everybody knows the Tech Center. It's really a beautiful place for business because there are all the setbacks and so forth. These are new buildings that are higher than anything in the Tech Center that are set right on Bellevue. There is absolutely no room for parking. I'm sure they have parking in the back, but why no setbacks? It's a graceless transition. It's not like building in Cherry Creek, which is also a big transition area and a chain. But it just seems so oddly inappropriate.
Right. So I don't know what the zoning is on Bellevue, but I do know that there is a movement, and it's nationwide, to move buildings closer to, and this is about walkability, okay? This is trying to get to more of a Main Street kind of feel when we used to, on your hometown, walk down a sidewalk and walk in the front door and not have it be so auto-oriented. Well, that... Okay, well, I will tell you if it's in the city and county of Denver, and I don't think that is. One Bellevue? No, I'll have to look at the zoning. That doesn't. You can put something up to the property line, but the distance between the property line and the curb, there's standards for that. I mean, you have to have a 5-foot minimum sidewalk, and you have to have an 8-foot minimum tree lawn. So, I can't imagine. You think it's less than that there? I'll check it out. No, that's interesting. I'll check it out. One Bellevue is the name of the project? Yeah. Yeah, no, that's tight. I hear you.
The new buildings over at the Cherry Creek Shopping Center along First Avenue do not have that setback either.
No, they don't. You're right. That's all CMX zoning. It's urban center, mixed use center zoning. And those are intended to be built that form is intended to be built to the property line.
Yeah, but the thing is that when we come down after living up there for a long period of time, we recognize that. We recognize the change of attitude that is occurring in there.
Yeah.
And we're very critical of it. I've talked to many neighbors, same way. They're very critical of it.
Yep.
So I wanted to tell you that also, essentially magnify what she had said.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you the question I wanted to get to. I am very happy that you're talking about autonomous vehicles, because I think that the autonomous vehicle is about the only savior we're going to have. I was a Colorado Air Quality Control Commissioner for 9 years, and Dr. Cog used to come and testify to us and tell us about how long it was going to take to travel in the Metro Denver area, about 35 years from now. And, well, it wasn't either. It was 35 years from when I was a commissioner, which ended in 2008, so less than 35. They said our time to travel would go out to 353% of what it was now as an average. Now, you're talking about things like autonomous vehicles and things like this to go ahead and handle that problem. And I hope that's the case. It depends on how rapidly we're able to bring in something like autonomous vehicles. I don't like having to rely on public transit as the main transportation system. How do you respond to that?
Well, I guess my response is I agree with what you just said. I think that's a valid, totally valid concern. And all I can say is that we and every department and division and regulatory group that I know is working really hard on it right now. The mayor's got a mobility working group, the strategic transit plan. It's all about the essence of that question, which is how, with more and more of us coming to a successful place that we all love, and I think the title of my presentation was Legacy and Promise, how do we respect and maintain the legacy of what we are, which is what has made us great today? How do we not sacrifice that, but fulfill a promise that is the potential of what's next? And all these things, affordable housing, sustainability, mobility, usable mobility that's really true. If we're not going to drive single-family vehicles anymore, nobody's getting out of a single-family vehicle unless we give them better options that you really want to use. So we don't have all the answer, but that's what we get up every day to do. So thank you very much for your question, and thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Brad.
All right, thanks.
Don't go. Brad, thank you very much. And we have made a donation to get 50 kids inoculated against polio.
Awesome.
And that is our mission, as you know,
Yeah,
as
I
a
do.
pastortarian. So we thank you very much for your participation today, and I think it was very relevant and great conversation. Thank you. You know, Peg Johnston belongs to Lee Everding's Eclectics, and they had a speaker that came and spoke on the autonomous car, and she turned me on a book that he wrote, and I forget the name of it. Peg, are you here? What, do you remember the name? Yes, Driverless Road. Read it. It's, what's that? Rut Bridges. And it is a fascinating read. If you do the Kindle edition, it has links to videos. And the future is 5 years away, and I will be in a car. So it's fascinating read. It's great. Tell you what, I'm going to ask our brand new Rotarians and their sponsors to please head on to the door. Brad did mention that the development happening over at the stock show, and Paul Andrews, the CEO of the stock show and a Rotarian, is going to come next week and tell us about the vision and the plan that they have for the stock show. So do come in. And to discuss a little bit about the four-way test, there is one of them that is it fair to all concerned? And Brad has that very difficult task of finding the way to allow growth, to respect history, but to look at the future and to find a balance and a compromise that works. So Brad, we thank you for your leadership, and we wish you the best of luck. And remember the four-way test on the way out the door. Thank you.